Hey guys, how's it going? I wanted to show you something that's been feeding at my back door here. For the last, I don't know, month or so here, I've got actually 4 deer here. Let me back this up. There's a buck here. He's got fuzzy knobs here just starting. There's 4 of them coming in here. There's a doe coming in here, and she's got half of her ear chopped off. Looks like a coyote got her. But you can see right here this little black tub. This is out back, right by 20 feet from my back door. I put water in it, and I've got 11 of those Muscovy ducks that come in here. And let's go down through here. This is some shots of some deer coming in at my other location where I snare pigs. Okay, here's that same buck again. This was about a week ago. They don't come in every night, they come in every other night. This is not at my back door, this is out in the pig woods. That's in the pig woods, and there's a big pig. I'll show you what he looks like. I've got his skull on top of my gun cabinet. There's some more pig shots. There's some rats. There's a flying squirrel. Rocky the flying squirrel. Anyway, let's go in here and show you oh, here's one here I want to show you here. This guy here. This is back by the beehive. I showed you this barrel here that I watered my bees with. I got that piece of cypress wood floating in there. There is a salt lick right here, trophy rock. But look at this buck that comes in now. He's kind of impressive, huh? Nice 8-pointer. I've not seen him in a while. It's possible, but I don't think so, that buck that's got the knobs is him, but I don't think so. But right through there, I showed you that day, I showed you this barrel, that trail, they come right through here. And that's the buck I've got in my backyard, right out by the beehives. Okay, let's go in here and I'll show you something else what I used to do as a sideline. Show you this little note here. Don't feed the animals, they're stuffed. And here's the critters. Here's a few deer that I've taken with a bow over the years. Here's a gray fox. I actually snared him in the fence. He was killing my chickens. Here's a wild boar, one of them, one of many I've taken. I didn't have, those are fake teeth. I put those fake cutters in there. That's not the real cutters on that particular animal. I had a spot that I hunted, actually it was a beehive location for saw palmetto and gallberry. And the lady that owned the land let me hunt there. I was the only one allowed to hunt. I could not hunt with a gun, I had to use a bow, but that's what I've always enjoyed doing anyways, bow hunting. All these deer came from a farm, my buddy's farm in Michigan. I was traveling up there every year to get these. That nice 10-point right there in the center, I call that a liar buck. I did not take that buck. My buddy took a nice 8-point. It was an 8-point, and I asked him, are you going to mount it? No. I said, what are you going to do with the cape? Throw it out for the coyotes to chew on. I said, let me have that cape, because it's a beautiful cape, as you can see. And that rack, that 10-point rack, it came from a antique shop, believe it or not, in Daytona, Florida. Miss Daisy and I were up there on a road trip, and I walked into an antique store, and that rack was laying next to the cash register by the exit door, and it had a $50 price tag on it. I didn't question it at all. I pulled out $50 cash and gave it. The person walked out with that rack. And I sat with that rack for several years in my workshop trying to find out, you know, because I'm back in my mind, I said, I'm going to put that on a nice cape if I could ever find it. Well, that is a 19-inch neck on that. And we measure, when you measure a cape, you take a flexible tape and you go right around the neck area here, pull it tight. This particular buck here, this little 10-pointer, is a beautiful little buck. He was, I think he was 17 inches all he is. But you can see that's how you measure your deer, your mannequins when you get them. You can see you can get them in all kind of positions, sweeps and whatever. But the key to, I did this for quite a few years on a sideline basis because my main means of income was a pipeline foreman. But I did this on the side, and the trick is on taxidermy getting the eyes correct. You have to get the tear ducts correct, eyes right, the ears right. These ears are they don't have an insert in them. These are all formed with fiberglass chop strands and Bondo, car Bondo. We put this in, make it up, and you put it in, you form these ears up like that. You've got to get the angle of the horns correct. It only comes with time and watching many deer pictures and whatever. The noses on these are, once you skin them out, they come flat and they lose their original like texture. And the way you get this texture back, I've got a little roller that's got these dimples in it, and you take epoxy sculpt and you smear a thin layer on here and you roll that, and that gives you that nice texture. The eyelashes on these have got to sweep downward, and in the corner of the eyes they've got to be pushed up, and all this around the eye where the transition of the glass eye meets the skin, that is filled in with colored beeswax, a black colored beeswax, the same as this bottom lip right here. This bottom lip is formed in with beeswax. So that's basically my little collection. I've taken a lot of deer. Most of them are spike horns and all, and quite a few years. There's a pretty impressive 8 there. So I've got one more in here I'd like to show you, a pig, one of my last pigs that I did. I got to get in here and do a little dusting. They're quite the dust collectors. You take liquid, they call it liquid gold, furniture polish, you dampen a rag, and you go over your trophies. You take a dust buster and you suck up the stuff and get the dust off them, and you liquid gold everything, antlers and all, with that. You have to have these trophies in an air-conditioned area. And another thing too, everybody says, oh, you can't use dry preservative. All these animals, all this stuff is done with dry preservative. I've sent none of this off to have professionally tanned mounts. And everybody that comes, oh, I've got to have it tanned. No, you don't. You can do all this stuff with dry preservative. The main thing is getting all the flesh off of the inside, and I did all that fleshing with a wire wheel. Took an 8-inch wire wheel, electric motor, all it was a bench grinder, and I rigged it up with 2 brass brushes side by side. It takes a while to get the feel of it. You can burn holes right through your hide and ruin your trophy. It takes a little feel. You have to practice, a lot of practice, to get it right. You will ruin some hides, but once you get the feel of it, you know, you will master it. A lot of the guys, professional taxidermy shops, they use 3,000 psi pressure washers and blast this flesh off the inside of these capes. All these deer that I did are done with a Y incision. You can see down here, you don't see anything. The Y incision, you cut from just what it says. You cut from under here, over this antler base, down to here, and then a small slit here. That entire hide is rotated off of this skull. When the customer brings it to you, you want at least 4 inches of neck meat here. That way you get an accurate measurement, and you bring that Y incision down to about where the neck meat stops. You don't cut it. Back in the old days, you cut it all the way down, and some still do, and some tanneries want that split all the way. This extra sewing, a lot of extra sewing and time that you don't need to spend on stitching. Stitching these animals up is slow, tedious work, and you use a baseball stitch to accomplish that. But that's kind of a you can learn this hobby, profession, whatever you want to call it, and go as far as you want to go with it. You will be super busy, so busy you won't have time to go hunting. Because once you start doing these heads, people get liking your work. You will be so busy that you won't have time to hunt or fish. So keep that in mind if you decide to undertake this. I don't do this anymore. Only thing my hobbies now are hunting and fishing and beekeeping. That's it. A little bit of gardening. That's all I do. I don't do any more taxidermy. But the work is out there. If you're looking for a profession, you can start at home. There's plenty of stuff online. You can learn it. There's plenty of YouTube stuff on how to do these mounts. I still have all of my tools, scalpels, and whatnot. The only scalpel that I used on any of my taxidermy work is a number 10 with the change out blades. And I used dry preservative. Van Dyke dry preservative's fine. Like I say, I use epoxy clay, beeswax. All these mannequins are covered with a hide paste. It's a water paste. You just mix it with water, and it goes all on its entire mannequin before you slide this cape back over and start adjusting things. You've got like 3 days of adjustment time on these heads, where you can tweak and move the eyes. You have to tuck these lips in. Once you get into it and you see how it's done, it's a very rewarding hobby. Fascinating. You meet tons of people. You can meet a hillbilly who lives in a tar paper shack, or you can meet somebody like President Trump. You never know. You meet everybody on the planet. It's a very interesting. You meet a lot of interesting people with this profession. You meet some good people and you meet some bad ones. But the majority of hunters out there are very, conscious of nature, love nature. They're not bloodthirsty killers. They're good people. The majority of them are very good people, and they love nature. They want to preserve nature and put it on the wall. So I got one more to show you in here, another head. Well, here's a few creatures here. They say, oh, dry preservative doesn't work. I mounted this little wood duck male in 1967. 1967. Here's one of my old buds here, Bill, up on the farm. a little spike I got there. There's a wolf looking at you. I think that's what I was in my last life. Was a wolf peeking around that tree at you. That's why I did that one. Here I am with my 10-pointer. I forget what year this was. I don't have a year marked on it. Anyway, this actually on the back of my of the deer, it's I put the dates. But I took that, had my buddy take that picture of right where he dropped, and he went a good 100 yards or more, and I double punched him right there. Double lung shot right there. Here's some smaller deer. I had one more here. Here's another one. This hog I just showed you that was on the film, this is him right here. I cleaned him up. You can see the size of the cutters on that dude. He was a pretty impressive hog. I let him out. I put cable around his both bottom and tie wired him to a tree out there and let the critters chew on this thing for about a week, and then I went in and it was still crawling with critters. I took it in and put it in a double bag, brought it in from the field. It was pretty nasty. I dropped it in a tank and boiled it, and then I did it in peroxide. I put peroxide in there and cleaned it up. So that's how he ended up. There's a Ted Nugent camo arrow, and there's the Nuge right there, signed thing by my buddy. I've never met Ted. He is a good friend of a friend of mine that runs a shop. Here is kind of proud of this little piece here. When my mother found out she was pregnant with me, she started this cross stitch. When she finished this a day or so before I hatched. Yeah, so this must be me. That must be a little buck, and there's mom of the doe. This thing was done over 70 years ago. And when they found it in storage, it was starting to fall apart, and it was in a little frame, and it had a little water damage here and all. So the guy fixed it up best we could, and it was starting to deteriorate, and we put this thing in this nice frame and fixed that up. But that duck right there, that's done with dry preservative, so don't let anybody tell you can't do an animal with dry preservative, because this animal right here, this duck right here was done in 1967. I know that for a fact. That little buck there in the center, I redid that. Originally, that was my dad's deer, the only deer he ever shot. He was too busy feeding 7 kids. He didn't have time to hunt, but he went with my grandfather, and he killed that buck, and it was in leather, and he gave it to me just before he passed. And so I redid it. I did it in felt, a flocking. That's a black flocking. I did it. You can see him here. Here's another one here. And he had a bullet. He said, "Let me show you something. I got the bullet to kill that deer." And there's the 30-30 bullet right there that killed that deer. So that's that. Now this guy here, I wanted to show you him. This little character right here is another one of my mouth. This is a fake cutters in here. These are not his cutters. This is a Wasco mouth insert and a Wasco nose on this thing. And that Wasco has got some very cool detail replacement parts. This hide right along here is super glued to this mannequin. This Wasco nose you get has got a little dip down in it just for the thickness of that hide. And so that is glued in. So you have the transition of the hide to the nose And you see, and most guys that do professional work, they use these replacement noses and stuff because you get the detail in there. Again, these ears are all done with Bondo and fiberglass chopping. This particular wild boar right here, it took me 5 trips up there about an hour north to collect him. He was a tricky one. He'd been hunted so much, and I bow hunted him, and he would come in and smell the air, and he was catching me. He winded me every time, and I had to keep moving trees, going up higher and everything. Finally got up 22 feet in the air, and he came in, I think it was the 5th time I went up, and he was looking all in the trees. I'd never seen a hog do that. These things are as smart as Labrador retrievers. This guy came in, he's looking all up in the trees trying to find me. And he was looking, and I'd moved over about 20 yards over from where he was coming in. And he was looking around, and then all of a sudden a squirrel behind him started going in a full-blown chatter. And he spun around to look at that and presented a perfect engine room shot. And I put that arrow right through him, and he went out there a good ways for that. With that arrow, I had quite a little drag to get him out of the woods. This pedestal stand here, this is something else you can do too. I just picked this thing up. It's dunnage from pallet wood. It had, it's got about a 2.5 square, a pallet, and I wanted to distress it so you can see all the marks in it, and the stand too. What I did is laid it out in the driveway and took a 3/8 toe chain, and I bullwhipped it with a toe chain to get all the distress marks. And then I took the grinder and just made distress marks, and it was oak wood. So then I stained it. So that's something you can do. Here's something I used to do a lot of when I was in Michigan. I was in Michigan for several years before I came back to Florida. And there's my old red bone there and baller, the black and tan. And that's me there back in my younger day. And there's some old coon hide. These are coon hounds, and we between 3 of us, we had over 60 hounds. I only had up to 15 at one time, but that was totally crazy. And we ran coon and bear. We'd go up every year for 2 weeks in UP, Michigan, and run bear. So this was all done in the late 60s and early 70s that I was doing that. And then I moved back to Florida. But that's a little history of what I've done, and I've got to repair that now. I just dropped it. That's a little history on some of the stuff that I used to do. So this is something you guys can get into. You want to learn quickly, you can go to a taxidermy shop and tell them you want to learn it, and just volunteer work. You can do volunteer work and get in these places, and help them out. I've started a few people in this, and they've gone on to make a profession of it. So that's something I used to do. That's about it. That's a little taxidermy tour, and I hope you enjoyed it, and maybe you learned something. Catch you all later. Be happy. Bye-bye.